I just need your contact information, or I can give you my card, and then we will follow up with you about who you're connecting with as far as the partners go. So, in third place, don't waste the drive. In second place, Emo. And apparently number one, voting number one in your hearts. Can't do college. As a community college graduate, I may be amongst the minority folks. I could run it too fast. We're going to wrap up real quick. Thank you to everybody for cutting it out for a day and a half. I know some parts of this can be a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, and a little fatigue and things like that, but you have all done an awesome job. It's been a pleasure to work with you. So you learned a few things, hopefully, in the last 48 hours. Anybody speaking West Flemish now? Raise your hand. Some derivative thereof, right? So a little bit about common language, and hopefully that common language that you walked out with was at least an introduction to this notion that the value of what you're doing is kind of, at least in my worldview, is kind of the first thing you have to think about. If you can explain that, lots of great things happen afterwards. Not the technical details, those are all interesting, they're incredibly important, they're really fun, but somebody's got to understand those key things that we talked about, and those somebodies are really the people that hopefully you feel a little bit better about having those conversations with them. Whether that sponsor, you can articulate what you're doing, the exercise that you just spent a little bit of time on, you're going to be amazed how you're going to get a lot of the light bulb. I get it, that makes sense, I understand why you want to do it, I get why it's important, I see who it affects. The technical teams, I worked with technical people pretty much my entire career, and I will tell you one of the big misses that most people coming to a technologist fail to appreciate is they do want to understand why. They absolutely want to understand why. They want to understand all the stuff that you just did, and they will contribute to your project in ways that you cannot even begin to imagine, in a very, very different way. And they become attached to it in a different way. And those are very good things. So you can answer those three really important questions. I heard a lot of it here in the last 45 minutes. You did a great job. Those are important questions to be able to answer. Those are the basics. The look and feel and all that stuff is very important. I don't dismiss it all. I encourage you to, I was quietly clicking my heels over there going, I love the rough pencil sketch. I love the thing that was done with the ballpoint pen. I love the thing that was done with chalk. I like the really cool stuff too. But I like the fact that you're willing to put pen and paper and try. That's something we lose somewhere along the way, and that's unfortunate. So the last thing that I would mention is, hopefully what you figured out is, the really important piece is who's at the center, and it is your customer. There's always more than one person that's your customer. I've heard lots about clinicians, I've heard a lot of things about patients or groups that you're working with, teenagers, people who are suffering from any variety of things. Keeping those folks front and center is absolutely huge. And that was something very, very important. The very interesting thing about what happened in the last 24, 36 hours is you just talked amongst yourselves. You really didn't talk to any of these people. And to that end, I usually do a little bit of a presentation here about an example of something we've done. And one of the folks who works with my team is this young gentleman over here by the name of Sachin, Shah. And for those of you who got to work with Sachin, you understand some of his many talents. But I asked Sachin just kind of do more of a generalized example of how the value proposition canvas works and how it can make a big difference, something that people will be able to relate to a little bit. So we're going to take a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll wrap up with a couple of things. So Sachin, you're on.
Thank you. Thanks, Drew, and thanks everybody for showing up and for giving me the last 10 minutes of your time. I realize how tired you must be, but I think a lesson from history kind of helps understand why what we learned over the last 2 days is so important. So I picked something out of the Steve Blank lesson book as to why this process is really important. I'm going to set up a story for you. So it's 1996 and the internet is exploding, and innovative entrepreneurs have actually started to imagine ways to deliver groceries online and give them to people, in a home setting. So a couple of companies were actually born out of this. And before I continue, does anybody have interest in commercialization, or do you guys think about turning these ideas into products and companies one day? I mean, just rough show of hands, yes, no? Okay, so there are a few people that are interested in this. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate this as a story and why what we've done is so critical. So the first grocery store, I'm going to call company number one, and this actually has some local relevance because there's a guy named Louis Borders behind it. And he raised $396 million with the help of big banks like Goldman Sachs and big companies like Yahoo. And in 1999, they went public and raised even more money and had a valuation of $4.8 billion with a B dollars. And they followed the adage that if you build it, they will come, right? So they put all this money towards buying trucks, building up warehouses, this crazy infrastructure for how to deliver all the groceries on time and get them fresh, and the best analytics at the time that could get the food to customers on time and on demand. And sure enough, they got a high-powered CEO, some guy from Anderson Consulting at the time, which is now Accenture, and all the pieces were in place and it was ready to go. So who's got money on that horse right there? I personally, not knowing too much about business, I'd like to. Sure. I think they'd be successful. I personally think they would have been successful. Company number two guys dressed up as vegetables. This is literally what they did, okay? There's these two brothers that called Andrew and Thomas Parkinson out in Skokie, Illinois or something. And Andrew was in marketing at Procter & Gamble, and Thomas had some software background, and they wanted to come up with a concept called iPod. Now, this is true. This is before Apple came up with the idea. So they thought, we'll call it information and product on demand. Doesn't really convey a lot of value to me, but sure, whatever. And they said, let's go dress up as vegetables and talk to people at CompUSA. I don't know where they come up with this. Why? Well, what are they looking for? I guess they're looking for customers. But they actually signed up 400 people because they're like, well, we have this dial-up modem that we'll give you, and we have a little software package, and if you're willing to click in all the groceries that you want, maybe we can help you. So Andrew and his wife delivered the food out of a Honda Civic. And you get a Honda Civic owner, really reliable car, so good choice for a first delivery vehicle. And then slowly but surely they expand a little bit, and they get to Chicago by 91 and by 93 and San Francisco, and they've actually got 4,500 customers. And 1996 comes around and they launched their website. So who's got their money on horse number two? One person. Okay, a couple of people. All right, so I don't know, maybe we're rating the scales a little evenly. All right, well, here's my question. Who do you recognize today? Company on the left or the company on the right? Yeah, Steve Blank. So what they did was customer discovery, right? So what they got out there and they talked to the actual users of the product, and they said, "What is it that you're looking for? We don't know. Even though we've been in the side of the business, we don't know what it is you really want." I mean, you can put $1 billion behind something and still have the largest .com history, which is what happened. Right? People just built it because they're like, well, clearly they'll close stores. Duh, it's no brainer. No, actually, it was really complicated, and these guys knew that. And they are now over 20 years old. They've had actually over 15 million orders. They're very successful. And what you've learned today is very fundamentally similar to what these guys did. So just remember the lessons you learned today, because it's extremely important to understand your customers, period. You're talking about human behavior, you're talking about wants and needs and fears that you really just assume you know. I mean, everything we did today in the last 2 days was just assumptions. We just put sticky tape on boards. We don't really know any of this, right? So get out there and talk to people. That's all I wanted to finish with. But Drew, thanks for letting me talk.
We had a couple of questions yesterday. lots of things you guys talk about and kind of, let me in on the goods, so to speak. So this is the Drew Bennett version of the goods. You guys are going to get this presentation. People were furiously trying to sketch things down. I think some of the panels were talking about this, et cetera, et cetera. Go back to my little spiel yesterday. Ultimately, the thing that I would tell you I've become a student of is really the process of trying to get good software. It's really what it is. And there are some things you have to understand about that. There's some things that, if you're really interested in that process, there are a lot of great things out there. So this is my version of the goods. Another exploding screen just to make sure everybody has enough food and home post lunch. Everybody still with me? There you go. So, a lot of talk about design. There's tons of things about design. I would tell you these are 3 phenomenal books. If you want to read great books, this first one called Don't Make Me Think. It's been out for probably now 10 or 15 years. It's got by a guy named Steve Krug. The original version of it's out there. You can now read the revised version. I haven't read it. Great book to talk about design thinking. You don't know what users are going to do. It's a really good expose about that. There's another great book just about design in general called The Design of Everyday Things, a really phenomenal book, and it just talks about how things are put together. Why do you love things like your iPod? Why do you love things like your car? Because people have thought about this. About the page was written by a guy named Alan Cooper. Alan Cooper was actually one of the first guys who developed a GUI interface into actual design for software. He was actually one of the first people involved in the development of Visual Basic. So, a little longer book, but a really good one. Back up here. This is a great blog by a guy named Winkowski. He's a really good guy, Canadian guy. He doesn't post nearly as much as he used to, but even if you went back and read all this historical stuff, you'd go, man, that's phenomenal. UFPA.org is the User Experience Professionals Association. Mountains of stuff there. So if you're really into the design side, there's some great resources. A lot of conversation the last couple of days about user-centered design. Stanford is kind of the hub of this as far as I'm concerned. They have their own process. They start with trying to empathize with the user and go through the definition ideation phase. Some folks here over at SPH use this, and her team use it. It's phenomenal. It's great stuff. They have a mountain of resources on the website. You can actually go through training online. You can download all their stuff. Very good stuff. You heard me say it a zillion times yesterday. We don't do design. This is design. And it's a good contrast if you want to understand.
So I just would put in a plug that we actually they do a 1.5 hour design crash course that anybody can do anywhere, and we've done it a number of times here on campus. So if people are interested in that practice, and we're happy to run that for you.
And HHS is a really good design usability site. Phenomenal set of resources in there. There's a lot of user-centered design stuff there as well. I encourage you to check that out. So you're going to talk about stuff because I'm, really old, and there's all these old books out there. If you really want to figure out where things came unglued and people kind of figured this out, this is a good set of books to read. I think I was telling you a story. I was on a project, and somebody said to me, said, well, what are the requirements on this project? The person literally handed me that second book, Death March, and said, these are the requirements of this project. Really interesting stuff about how software is built. Steve McConnell, one of the original founders of Microsoft. For all the software folks in the room, if you've never read The Mythical Man Month, I absolutely encourage you to read it, because the one thing we talk about is you're going to have to get some sense of scope and scale. The Mythical Man Month is the great. Well, we can get that done in a month. Sure you can. So it's trying to get a little understanding of this great. All the value proposition stuff, Steve Blank, Sachin mentioned this guy, he's kind of the grandfather of this process. He's done a ton of work. Strategizer is the company that put these things together. You can actually get this off of Steve Blank's site. It's about a 20-page article from Harvard Business Review. It talks about this whole process basically lean. As far as to move through these things in an area fashion, I strongly recommend it's really good. I would tell you, if you don't have this in your desk or somewhere within arm's reach, it doesn't matter what it is. This is my tools of choice. Buy some markers, buy some colored pencils, buy a notebook. I don't care what it is. These are the things I use, and have them at your disposal. Because when that idea comes, it will vanish. Sketch it out real quick. You don't have to be an artist. Get the idea down, have it available to you, encourage it out with your other teams. Capturing the idea is really, really critical. I think people miss this a lot. So I'll remember that. Well, I had a really cool dream last night at about 1:15 in the morning because I had this really rich dinner. Like, I'll remember that. I woke up this morning. There's a vague memory. I don't remember what it was. So get some tools that you can use as well. Everybody asks about this in the digital discovery process that we run in Office of Tech Transfer. There are a zillion tools. The two tools that we use that we pay for are a tool called Balsamic. I think Angela has mentioned this, or somebody on the panel. If you can click and drag, you can run this tool. It is rough by design. It is intended to do that. You can have screens for iPhones and iPads and buttons and all this stuff. If you want to spend some money, it's a great tool. There's a couple other things called Framebox. I used Spencer Project for years and years and years when I worked at startup because we wouldn't even spend the $29.95 to get Balsamic. So there are alternatives. You haven't figured out, this is probably the most text I've ever actually had inside of a presentation. I'm a big fan of graphics. Pictures are way more interesting for you to look at. These are the two I use. The Noun project is phenomenal. It's probably the best $9.95 you can spend a month. All those icons, all the stuff you see in my presentation, that's where it's from. It's all you can eat. And icons, mine is very similar to the project. Here at UofM, tons of resources, tons of communities, lots of great things going on. We work very closely with the mobile development group. There's the mobile app center. They have a lot of resources on their site. Really good stuff. There's a ton of developer communities here at Michigan, so that's site. There are 3 other groups that I really, really want to make sure I take a moment to point out. One is there is an initiative by a pediatrician at med school named Joyce Cleaves, a phenomenal person. She started this initiative called Health Design by Us. They do a ton of user-centered design. Even if you have nothing to do with what they're working on, if they have a get-together or a group design activity, I strongly recommend you all participate. They're big UCD folks that are really, really into it. They're very closely aligned with the Stance Design School and the folks there, so they do some really, really interesting things. We'll pitch for the School of Public Health, and Ann and her team run this thing called Innovation in Action. Great thing for students. If you have students that are interested in this process, they use pretty much a lot of the stuff you saw today and a lot of other things, so really something to look at. And then the Center for Entrepreneurship. Here at Michigan are the folks who really brought the business model canvas and value proposition canvas to Michigan, as I understand it, and they do a ton of great things as well. So that's the resource list. You'll get that, and I'll try to write them all down. My last pitch. This is kind of what we went through a little bit today. We'd love to continue to help you with that dialogue. If you're interested, please feel free to reach out to me. Like I said yesterday, this is free if you're here at Michigan and you're faculty, staff, or associated with the university. We're here to help you, so it's a benefit. The last thing I tell you is a colleague of mine asked me a question, and I thought about this question a lot, and she said to me, I'm a cross-country skier with a very serious running problem. And I've run for a long time, and I've found my way into ultramarathons. We're having a discussion about this. It's like, are you out of your mind? How do you run 50 miles? And I had to stop and think about this. Like, how did you run? How do you do that? I mean, how do you do that? And the thing I would tell you to think about is just like this process, the way you do that is you take one step. And you just took that step in the last few days. You take one step. And it is an exploration, and it takes time, and you work through it, you learn things, but I think the relationship is there. It starts by doing what you've just done, so you're off to a great start. I strongly advocate Relentless Forward Progress. It's a great book by a ultramarathoner if you're interested in reading something about it. But most importantly, get that first step. We've done it. So thank you for your time. If you are one of the folks in the 3 groups that, for the winners, if you could just come up front real quick, I want to take some quick group pictures of you guys. And thank you